From the basement of La Penta, it's WICR.
Hello everyone, welcome back to the Sports Fall Jersey. Joe Archino back here, and we are about a quarter of the way through the start of the 2016-17 NFL season, and obviously after Monday night, the New York Giants at center talk of all the discussions that are happening around the water cooler, and what really started as a 2-0 start filled with a lot of optimism has turned into a 2-2 start with some uncertainty, and obviously Minnesota on the road for the New York Giants, especially under Eli Manning's career, has been a tremendously difficult challenge that he has really struggled to get a foothold against. Their whole team has really struggled. I didn't have the Giants winning this game, but I think the thing that you're the most concerned about is the levels of uncertainty in different areas. I think you have to look across the football field, especially with Odell Beckham Jr. First and the foremost. Now, obviously, I want to preface this all to say I covered the New York Giants last season for 104.5, the team, ESPN Albany. I was in the Giants locker room after every game. I went up to Odell after every game and had to get content from him, had to ask him questions. I can't say a bad word about Odell Beckham Jr. I thought he was always very kind, very curious to the media. He would always give the media his time. He'd always answer questions thoroughly and to the best of his ability, but now, obviously, the questions are there for Odell and about his ability to really be focused and keep his emotions in check during the game. Now, to me, one of the biggest things that I took away from the game was Eli Manning, and we all know Eli. He's kind of a guy who just is going to give you the regular conservative answers. He's never going to give you anything much more than what's the standard. But even him saying some of the things that he did after the game last night, like about Odell, he's got to be aware. And one of the quotes that really stuck out to me, he's brought that on himself, and he's got to realize that. Now, I don't think that anything that Eli was said in reference to Odell Beckham Jr. and obviously his conduct was wrong, but it's very un-Eli-like. Eli is always a guy who, again, he just goes up there, gives you the standard answer when things go right and when things go wrong. But obviously this is a situation now where Odell is one of the young, bright faces of the league, has done tremendous things. But right now, there's questions about his ability to keep his emotions in check during football games. And obviously Odell has made himself a target when it comes to that. In the big games, we've seen it. Obviously, Carolina was a big tipping point. We saw them play the Redskins late last season where, again, it seemed like after every play, he was just going crazy. And look, I mean, some guys, they play with that chip on their shoulder, but Odell seems like he plays with the world on his shoulder. It seems like when he takes the football field, the entire world is out there to get him. And again, some people use their emotions in different ways to fuel them up, but it does seem like Odell just puts a little bit more on top of the regular when it comes to trying to find motivation to go out there and to just do everything he can on the football field. Now, obviously, in the score last night, obviously, for anyone who didn't catch it, Vikings 24, Giants 10. Vikings go to 4-0, and really is remarkable when you consider all of the trouble, all the injuries that they've had. But that really just goes to show you what organization can really do in the NFL and what having a defense, a once in that generation type. Now, maybe that's a little bit too far to say, but I don't think any of us would debate how strong this Vikings defense is. The Broncos kind of gave us all a little bit of a reality check last season where we saw the dynamic, incredible Carolina Panthers offense going up against that really, really stout Broncos defense. And Peyton Manning was obviously at the end of his career. He did not have that offensive prowess we once saw him have. But the Denver Broncos defense was just so good, so dominant in that game that they were able to just advance and get through it because of it. And I think when you look at Minnesota, it's not that to that level because Sam Bradford, again, he's been tremendous. If you asked anybody and told him that he would be thrown into a situation like this and be 4-0 and be playing as well as he has been with as good a command without his star running back, I think you would all sign up for it in a second. But the Vikings, obviously tremendous, but back to the Giants, it's Odell is obviously one of the big question marks. Ben McAdoo has addressed it. Eli Manning has addressed it. It really comes down to Odell Beckham Jr. now, and I think he's so young, and he will learn from it because he's a guy who is very self-aware. And I think there's a big difference between a player who doesn't have the self-awareness and a player who does have the self-awareness. And Odell is a guy who really does. I think sometimes it's hard to really look at yourself when you're that young and you're still figuring things out. And I think that's one of the biggest things you still have to understand about Odell Beckham Jr. He is a guy who is still figuring it out. This is really only his third season. He's missed some games here and there, even his rookie season. And he's a guy who's still figuring out life in the National Football League. And I think we've talked so much on Odell that obviously Eli Manning is also a guy you have to talk about in just the way that he has played. And obviously the headliner in the first two games was just the offensive versatility that he had to work with in this offense. Victor Cruz back, making sizable contributions. Sterling Shepard looks like the new kid on the block. Tremendous young rookie talent. And then Odell Beckham Jr., I don't think any of us have to really debate too much about how good he is. But Eli, obviously, the last two games has struggled mightily, and I think, to me, the biggest thing that if you're a Giants fan and you look at the Giants' offense that drives you the craziest is in the critical situations where Eli goes with the football and what he does in those big moments. I think all you really have to do is look at the last third down and the last fourth down plays for Eli Manning in that game last night. Who does he go to for that third down and his fourth down? It's not Sterling Shepard, it's not Victor Cruz, and it's not Odell Beckham Jr. Now, the Vikings did a tremendous job covering up the Giants' playmakers yesterday in that game. They really did a good job at taking away big plays and making all those really good players' lives very difficult to get open and make something big happen. But even with that being said, you can't continually go in the biggest situations, keep throwing the ball to these guys, to Paul Parker. I mean, that's probably the biggest thing that when you look at the stats last night, the fact that Paul Perkins led the Giants in receiving last night really is incredible with the talent that they have there. And part of that is because of how good the Vikings defense is. But I think the biggest part of it, and the thing that frustrates you the most, is who Eli is looking for when the moment matters most. Now, Eli has made a career out of doing some great things in the NFL, obviously. I think you go back to the likes of even back in some of the glory days that he had. Sometimes his go-to guy in a third down wouldn't be the best receiver he had. It would be the Steve Smith type of guy. But you can't go to Will Tye every single play, every single time you're in third down and long. You can't go to a young guy, Paul Perkins. You have the star transcendent talent. You need to use it. And I think that's one of the things that's of growing frustration right now to Giants fans is just who he continues to go to the ball with in the biggest spots. It's very hard because when you're in the rhythm of the game, you're not really thinking like that. But you've got to take a chance with all this talent. You can't keep on throwing the ball to Will Tye, to Paul Perkins. You throw the ball to the guys who have made their name, the guys who have that transcendent talent. You just have to, and there's no other way around it. And the interceptions obviously have been very costly as well. And look, we've seen a lot of great guys. Everybody throws interceptions, but you just look at the ones that have been thrown, and they just really disrupt any rhythm that they would have had. And I do think at times, especially in the first two games, there clearly was a plan there. They looked very organized. And then these last two games, there have been moments where that organization certainly has been lacking. And look, now they go on the road. They've got a huge game against the Packers to follow this one up, and not a lot of people would probably go with the Giants right now, but it certainly is the type of game that historically they are built to respond to. Even in the Tom Coughlin days, this would be the type of game where their backs are kind of against the wall, they hadn't been playing too well, where they would absolutely respond. But Tom Coughlin isn't there right now. It's obviously Ben McAdoo's show now, and now he's kind of got a show. This is kind of the first test of his career where his team, their back is up against the wall. They've lost 2 straight. They can't make it 3 straight. That division it's so interesting because that division last season, obviously, it was a down period for almost everyone there. This season, it looked like the Giants had this thing locked up with the health that they had compared to some of the other uncertainties. The Eagles, we weren't sure what Carson Wentz was going to look like. Tony Romo's injury obviously left a huge void in the Cowboys. And the Redskins, even though they won that division last season, it wasn't behind the most convincing reasons that they did it behind. And even them, they've rallied a little bit as of late, but I don't think we have held them with the highest degree of certainty. So now we kind of shift all of that. Carson Wentz is tremendous. We look at him, he's probably the next transcendent young gun talent. The Cowboys have played very, very well. Dak Prescott has been tremendous. Ezekiel Elliott has ran the ball super effective, and their offensive line is just making everything work there. In the Redskins, again, I don't know if we hold them in the same certainty that we do with the Cowboys and the Eagles right now, but even them, they handed the Giants their first loss. They're always going to be a tough one to play against. So now the Giants are in that situation where there is much more certainty and a much more clear picture in the NFC East emerging. I think after the first two games, we kind of looked at it and we thought, the Giants had a great chance with their experience, with their health, with some other things to really run away with this thing. But now, certainly that has shifted, but Ben McAdoo has a big, big question to answer. His team, his first experience as a head coach with his team really up against the wall. How will they respond? I do think that they will. Again, it's still too early in the week to make your picks, but whenever it looks too easy in the NFL, it always is, and I think this is one of those perfect situations where the Giants are down right now, the Packers obviously are at home, and not a lot of people are going to pick against them there, and just based on what we've seen from them historically, this is a game they normally bounce back in, but I'll wait a little bit later in the week to make the picks for this one. But until the next time, Jersey, Joe Archino here with the Sports Vault. You can follow me on Twitter at Joe Archino and on Instagram, Jersey_Joe_Archino. And I'll catch everybody in the next episode.